To this month's July Artisan's Palate presentation. We're focusing today simply on hormones, hormone health, hormone care, a lot of prevention, and a lot of rehabilitation and protection. One of the things that I find in what I sort of do and how I kind of work with people when it comes to hormones is that you can't turn an ocean freighter around on a dime. And it's an interesting piece about the problem where a lot of people, and I don't know how many people today would actually raise their hands and sort of say, do you feel like you're in control of your hormones, or do you feel like your hormones totally control you? And that's the difference between being out on the ocean and actually being in control of your boat, or having the waves push you around. It's interesting because when we bring things into perspective, it's no different than vitamins. It's just a different process because it's actually not beneficial to eat them. It's great to get extra vitamin C and to eat more vitamin C. It's actually not beneficial for most people to actually eat or consume or inject or take a cream or any type of hormone outside of their body and put it in. So it's a different style of game and a different puzzle that we have to play when it comes to hormone health. So it's a big piece in there where I want to, just jump through some pieces, and a lot of this I think always goes back to in this 1 hour session. It's very hard to talk about everything, but it is one of those where we can focus on especially what people have their most specific questions on, and it lets me at least do some dispelling of misinformation, really trying to re-solidify people in their own understanding so they can walk into their life after they leave here today saying, okay, I'm going to take that hint, those pieces, and I'm going to start doing them and see what happens. Because that process is one where we can start to see changes occur, and that's that whole concept of really taking the time that it really takes to actually turn the ship around and get it headed in the right direction for us. So let's go ahead, and for anybody who's new, what we do whenever we start a class is we always go through a conscious breathing exercise. One of the most important pieces regarding any level of health, but especially hormone health, is being able to functionally breathe. Everybody here obviously showed up without a stretcher or any sort of oxygen tank, so you're breathing on your own. Good job. But that's the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system requires you to think about what you're actually going to do in order for it to happen. And that's one of those processes when you activate your breathing cycle and you do this process, it literally detoxifies, energizes, keeps it enhancing metabolism, changes the entire way your hormone profile will operate. So, very simple 1-minute meditation that anybody can do. Today will be the first time for some, second time for a few others, but it should be something you find in a routine pattern for the rest of your life in order to enhance your health. We take a very long, deep inhalation, 7 seconds. About 3 to 4 seconds that's pulling air in, and then 3 seconds is holding, and then you actually exhale all the way out to the point where you kind of can't breathe out anymore, all the way closing the lungs, and then that's an 8-second exhalation, and then we breathe back in 7 seconds, breathe out 8 seconds, and then 30 seconds of normal breathing and just silence, as much as this will allow us to, in order to actually get on with the rest of the class. And you'll see, literally in 1 minute, you'll be almost a brand new person just by going through this exercise. So just join me. 7 seconds of breathing. Really focus on right here at the actual low part of the ribs. This is where your diaphragm is located, and this is how you actually open up and squish all the air out, is using that muscle system. So if you don't breathe from there, that's one of these big things where we'll start to learn how to do that. So 7 seconds of breath in for everybody. Holding those upper few seconds, and then 8 seconds of breath out. Really deep, all the way down to the point where you're like, okay, no more. And then 7 seconds of breath in. Holding for those few seconds. And 8 seconds of breath out. Thank you. So, in doing that, literally your entire body changes. We constantly breathe shallow, very quick, very fast, like a rabbit, like a small dog, and you watch them on the couch and you're seeing them do their thing, and you're like, that just doesn't look comfortable. And it's really not. We breathe it for necessity instead of for actual function. One of the biggest ways that I started training myself differently to do this operation was in the car. As soon as I got in the car, turned it on, seatbelt on, backed up, okay, everything's cool, and I'm finally driving forward, just that process. Just get into this mode of, okay, now I'm in the car. Car is happy. I turn the music on. I got control of things, minus this people driving in and out and causing craziness. But the idea is there's a routine practice for here. A lot of people will attend yoga classes and things like that to be able to enhance breathing exercises and go through that process. It's definitely a part of it, but a lot of people don't think about their breathing unless they're instructed, at least at first. So huge step in the process of regaining health is actually doing this exercise routinely for yourself. Lots of other breathing techniques out there. But one of the big pieces about the breathing system is we just changed the entire energetic profile of your body by actually doing that breath. For the first time, maybe today, you were not stressed for air. It's very funny because that's one of the most constant, rapid cycles that we go through in an entire day. When it comes to hormone health, one of the big pieces I want to start getting the population to change their minds on is the fact that hormones have to change quick. If hormones change quick, you are literally transferring hundreds of thousands, if not billions to trillions of cellular interaction systems on a dime. And it's not healthy. It's one of those unique things. Yeah, you might feel better. Yeah, it might balance you. You might feel all right. You can deal with things. But the idea is to, a lot of times, use crutches and ways of getting ourselves to be healthier on controlling hormones while we've got a long-term plan for actually getting the entire system working for us. Again, we are all given the ability to actually take care of ourselves in our own ways. It's just our patterns, our routines, behaviors, foods, waters, stress, all these things get in the way of being extremely healthy. So when I say that, I really want people to understand when we talk about some hormones that we know, the way that we're currently controlling them, that we're currently working with them, and how to maybe start to change our minds a little bit about how to look at controlling them in the future. So anybody want to jump out with one of their hormones that they actually know off the top of their heads? You said serotonin. Fantastic. The happy hormone. So it's very, very wonderful, and yet one of the most depleted hormones inside the human body, especially in the American culture. We get 2 weeks off a year. Most countries on the Eastern and especially European areas, they take 4 months. Like, they just go away and live someplace else forever. It's unique because there's this something about, we all know, a South Beach diet, Mediterranean style diet. It works in the Mediterranean. Doesn't work here because it's not, we don't live that way, and we can't actually consume the food they do because of our stress levels, our sleep levels, and everything that we do for ourselves here. So it's unique because serotonin is a very big one, and we're going to learn a lot about how to boost it and how to actually reprogram the way your body uptakes it and produces it. So I like that. Anybody else stabbing out there with the hormone that they know of? Estrogen. Okay, fantastic. Huge over-dominance in this population. It creates a ton of problems. It's a hard to regulate and control hormone because there's actually 3 types. And that's one thing that a lot of people, even when they have estrogen issues, they don't even know that there's actually 3 styles. One's really actually very positive for you. One, if it gets really heavy, can actually cause a lot of issues. And the third one is sort of this mix mash between when your body's kind of not knowing how to process one or the other. But it's unique because estrogen is also one of these huge concerns because everything from our food gives us estrogen. Most pharmaceuticals can give us estrogen. A lot of our water gives us estrogen. Even the atmosphere can bring us in estrogen. Even breathing in too much lavender technically can provide estrogen. And if you are estrogen dominant and not knowing it, you'll look at all these other solution patterns for trying to get control of your body and not realize that the one problem you've got in your system is there is far too much estrogen and your body doesn't know how to deal with it. So very, very good one. Anybody else? Tons of fun?
Cortisol.
Cortisol is definitely a hormone. Again, cortisol, so interesting. You actually need it to wake up and feel energized. Who's a morning person? Yeah? Okay. Means you don't get your cortisol at the right time. That's the issue. You'll probably find that you get hyper stressed and very hungry around 10 or 11, and then you totally crash at 2. And you're like, wait, what's going on here? Whereas most people wake up at, say, 5:36, and they have this visceral, deep energy. They can go run. They can start their gym day. It's because their cortisol is actually happening right before their body's waking, and they've gone through a really good sleep cycle, and their system's working. We always blame cortisol because it's been told to us that it's the tire creating a hormone, and that's true. But it's because a lot of people produce, again, far too much for far too long, and their body doesn't know how to process it out of its system. So it collects, and it creates a really deep-setting adipose tissue construction around the midsection. Cortisol, not actually a bad guy. Just when it goes over and abundant, we don't have control, creates some issues. So definitely a good one. Cortisol is fantastic.
Is thyroid a hormone?
Thyroid's a complex, yes. There's multiple types of thyroid hormone, but most people know of like thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH. But there are a very large tree of hormones that are working with the thyroid gland. And again, a major concern in our population, since we have everything from Hashimoto's to hypothyroidism as a massive epidemic in our society. Main reason being, of course, when we talk about it, we'll get a little deeper. Nutritional deficiencies aren't there to support your body and your production, and toxicities have gone to the point to where your system is completely shut down.
What's Hashimoto's?
Hashimoto's is technically the conversion of a 3-step process. First, you develop hypo or hyper, meaning dysfunction. Then you develop into thyroid toxemia, meaning your thyroid's now not working and everything's not functional. Finally, your immune system says, forget this guy, and they start attacking the thyroid cells. So Hashimoto's is an autoimmune level of disease to where your immune system is trying to clean up the system because, again, one of the key pieces in 2015 for me to talk to people is we are an interconnected, beautiful machine. And the problem is when one system starts to not work so well, everything else tries to fix it as best as it can, but ultimately the goal of the machine is survivability. So if it has to, then it will take it out.
Is that like hereditary? Because there's 3 members in the family with that.
There technically is nothing hereditary.
Oh.
But the funny thing is that, yes, the lifestyle of your family, the system you grew up in, the people you surrounded yourselves with, the places you eat, the things you drink, all that creates a coalescing or a common core in all of you developing kind of the similar scenario. So, yes, it is one of those where when you're looking at the family reunion, you're like, hey, me too, me too, me too, me too. You go, well, there must be something in our family causing this. More often than not, it's actually where you live, how you live, and the fact that we just are doing the same thing, same patterns, creating the same symptoms. So that's a big, big issue in that part. A lot of people love to just chalk it up to genetics and blame it on genetics, and then it's not in their control. And I'm telling you today, there's nothing out there that you can't fix, and you are in control. So we're going to learn a lot more about that the rest of the time. So one of the other ones out there, I'm hoping for somebody to say it. Testosterone's a good one. That's a nice one, like I say. Progesterone. Those are the conversion ones in order to get estrogen and testosterone. Melatonin. Sleep function. Adrenaline. Keeping us actual in the fight or flight response or making it to where we can lift cars when we need to. I like that one. That one's a lot of fun.
DHEA or something like that?
DHEA is another precursor, to the testosterone complex. Yep. There's only one more that I'm hoping we talk about before we move on past this one. You guys are doing amazing because a lot of times I get 3 and I'm like, okay, wait, now we got to keep moving this one.
Are endorphins hormones?
Endorphins are another style of again in that same category, right up there with the same similar material between serotonins, and they work both as neurotransmitters and hormones. Okay, lay it out there.
Yeah.
Insulin.
Oh.
Massively important hormone. Most people don't think of it as that, but it's huge in our health. Huge in our health. And we're going to learn a lot this afternoon regarding balancing, controlling, and maintaining insulin function production, because a lot of people's beginning core issue problem was something around insulin issues. That's where we'll see as we go into the concept of what we're going to talk about, how and why it became that way. So I love this because you guys are obviously into this. You don't learn a lot of this stuff or know a lot of this stuff unless you have at least read a few books or gone to a few articles and done your own research and material. And that's fantastic to work with groups of people like that. So I love hearing that. But let's, like I always do, turn it back a little bit and let's get real big picture for a few seconds, because the idea is we're talking a lot of times about a hormone. And this is a molecule that our body produces that literally is smaller than most of our cells, most of the material, a few atoms really just kind of shoved together, floating around our bloodstream, but powerful enough to change the entire way the system works. So it's very interesting when we get very microscopic about understanding things and how they work or don't work for us, create dysfunctions, and how to start correcting them. But a lot of times we get a little... let's just call it tunnel vision. We get a little too focused on the idea of, this is my problem, I've got a thyroid thing, and I need to take thyroid hormone because that's going to solve it. A little more than that. So I want to step back, because here's the way that I've understood hormone health. We are a behavioral, responsive, and adaptive unit that does a lot of great things, and we follow patterns and cycles. So the interesting thing is we are technically set by a sunrise, sundown pattern that kind of controls just about everything we do. And it's unique because most of our hormones mirror this. Along with the sun, there's actually a moon cycle system. There's actually a different interplanetary solar system, cycle systems for a lot of people, atmospheric cycles that essentially happen. And these are funny when we talk about it as a planet and realize you're just the same thing. A hurricane on the surface of the earth is nothing more than an organ having a dysfunction. You know, it's so unique when we see the way that we look at weather and we go, today's perfect. Well, that's the same as you actually having a good overall nutritional profile, no major stress, life's being fine, and then a thunderstorm comes. The idea is, what happened? Well, that guy cut me off. I don't like his Nissan. That's the way life works. You know, everything's falling apart, and you just changed your whole system because of, you know, usually some type of friction. But it's weird when we go back and forth and understand the way the world operates, that these cycles are the patterns that if we had no, let's call it industrial revolutionary influences, we wouldn't be in this situation. We've changed a lot about our environment and what we live and how we live, and therefore we're feeling the effects and the ramifications of that issue. Turn on a light after the sun goes down and sit by it for 4 to 5 hours, you are overburning your serotonin and not producing your melatonin. If you're eating late, you're actually, because you've had the lights on, you're cooking once you got home from work, you're essentially causing your insulin to spike right before bed. Now you start causing the thyroid to have to produce its systems to control the rest of the body, and it's sending signals to the pituitary gland, producing all the other cascade of hormones in the system. So it's unique because these advents actually have sort of turned back on us and caused a little bit of issue. But you can correct it. You can start to look at yourself in this way. The food and water cycles is the next sort of like smaller cycle. Most people in our society system think 3 meals a day, drink water every, maybe half hour, 2 hours, if depending on how you're, or not at all for some people who aren't water drinkers. And it's very fun to kind of go through this process. You are setting up every one of your metabolic hormones that actually are needing to be produced inside your body for how it's going to respond and operate. So if you eat first thing in the morning, empty stomach right after waking, big breakfast, that's how you get your fuel for the day. What's interesting is you've told your body how to live for the next few hours in terms of the hormones it's producing. This continues to where a lot of people don't realize that the big breakfast they have, it's 4 to 6 hours to digest. Then you eat lunch at noon. Well, now you've got maybe a little bit of clearance in there, but there's now just been a new big slog of food put into that stomach, and now you get extremely tired. And you go, what gives? I got to get some caffeine, because now all of a sudden my body's giving out on me. I've been eating all day. I think I should have tons of energy. What's happening? Well, the body's blood system does a very wonderful thing. It says, too much food here, take it out of the brain, put it down here, let's get this job done. This is more important to start digestion. and you're out running around doing your errands thinking you should be totally hyperactive, and it causes a dysfunction. So it's the concept of, if you eat, wait an hour to get in the pool. Why? You don't want to create a muscle cramp, because blood flows coming out of your muscles and going to your stomach if you just eat. It's not anything other than that. It's just the idea there's not enough blood to do everything well. So it tries to make it up. But as soon as this occurs, like I say, that drop in energy is something where you can find ways to spur metabolism, get your stomach to work, a little bit better. Use compounds like ginger, or actually start to drink just warm water, and it can help your body start to assimilate with enzymes more of its system. But so this food and water cycle sets us up into a pattern system for telling our body how to respond to what we're directly doing to it. And this is the place where we have the most control. I don't know if you've tried today or any other day this last year, but controlling the sun, a little tough. Controlling anything else, really hard. But you do have control of this one. And it's unique because this pattern is something that we program to ourselves. And today, you may not feel it. 10 years from now, keep the same pattern that's not healthy for your body, and dysfunction is going to be your normalcy. And that's one of those things where we've got to try to unwrite that and really move around it. So the other really interesting cycle that we go through that's very different than most, and again, we see this in native populations, is our stress cycles. So most of us have to wake up, get ourselves ready, hop in the car, run and go to work, and we have to come back and say, okay, an 8-hour or 10-hour or however long you're working stress cycle has just initiated. And it's hard because a lot of us don't know how to pull ourselves out of that stress cycle. We just leave ourselves kind of locked in. So when we talked about adrenaline, it's unique because adrenaline gives us this ability called fight or flight, and it lets us actually figure out what to do with our body. But if you're walking into a building that you don't like and you have to sit there for 8 hours when all you want to do is run away, you are destroying the adrenal glands by essentially causing them to secrete material to the point where they're exhausted. And we hear of adrenal exhaustion very commonly, and this is a very big issue for people who don't know how to focus on rest, relaxation, and get themselves out of a stress paradigm. This directly affects what's called the HPA axis. So we have the actual hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the actual and the adrenal complex. They are connected because they all secrete hormones that talk to each other. So when one's stressed, the rest of them just keep having more and more issues. So when we see this cycle occurring for ourselves, it's very hard to find ways or solutions, or to believe that that's the real reason you have a problem that started. Again, it's one of those to where if you are a person who doesn't like, say, a particular member of your family, and they show up every holiday, you go, there's that person. And your whole body changes, you're a normal, happy person, everybody's level, and then there's that person. And it's unique because you all of a sudden see a brand new side of yourself, but you can kind of control when that occurs. It's not so much the case whenever we get into situations about our jobs, about our day-to-day cycles. Southern California traffic has actually been cleared to be able to be listed as a potentiator for PTSD. It's unique because drive here for a few days and trust me, it's pretty bad. And it's very funny how we don't see the same thing that's occurring to where we know what a war zone will do to a person and their PTSD level, but the idea is we can't see that in our day-to-day lives. But it slowly accumulates and becomes a bigger and bigger problem. So these stress cycles is something that we also don't relieve ourselves well because we don't know how to relax when we need to, and we don't sleep very effectively. Again, anybody here who's dealing with small children, they can sleep sometimes 12 hours and be perfectly capable, happy, and still have a bad day. But it's funny because that 12 hours gives them the ability to have a full functioning sleep cycle for their brain, and they get to go through sometimes 20-30 minutes of REM sleep, which is where we do a lot of our really good clearing and cleansing. Whereas as soon as you hit to the age of 25, it's down to about 5 minutes. When you hit to the age of 50, it's less than a minute. And when you start to get anything above 80, it's usually less than a few seconds. And we don't know how to enhance that, whereas we see other cultures, they're very good about walking out into the woods and sitting by a stone brick and just, or a stone brook and just listening to the sounds and just calming, really calming. So this stress cycle is another place where you have some control most of the time, but it's unique because, of course, we get locked into our patterns, our situations, and we want to know what to do about it. So we're going to talk about a couple little quick solutions on there as well, too. My big focus in coaching and working with individuals and helping them is a lot of times focused on toxicity, though, because toxicity seems to be the one place where intervention has the most benefit. And toxicity is a huge concern for hormones because of a way that they operate. It's unique because, and this is a great example, so I love the fact that I can just do impromptu prompts. Around your cell, if I'm Mr. Cell, there are billions and billions and billions of little receptors, sites that actually allow for the absorption of certain molecules into your body. It's very unique because the cell wall that actually is in the outside, the cell membrane, is what does most of our thinking for us, not even really the nucleus. People don't get that, but it's one of those where we're catching up. So the unique thing is you've created a spot where this receptor site here says, I'm open for adrenaline, I'm open for serotonin, I'm open for insulin, whatever it might be that's necessary, it's going to occur. And then all that happens is in your bloodstream, floating around inside the system. Thank you for coming. We'll see you next time. The idea is they actually will start to fit into the hole and activate your cell. Once they're done or used, then the cell produces another typical hormone or some sort of enzyme that pops it out, and it goes about its way. Sometimes it's changed forever, and it's not the same as what it started out. In the cases of like DHEA and testosterone, sometimes it's something that does move around very rapidly, like insulin, to where it is used over and over again and has a life cycle. But it's unique because it's these places that a lot of time that get destroyed. And this is a great example. This is a cell site where technically something has come in here, heavy metals, plastics, pharmaceuticals, and now this reaction that needs to happen is not going to occur. So that's where we get an issue, and that's where dysfunction starts to occur. 1 or 2 times, no big deal. You've got trillions and trillions of cells, 50 trillion on the average. But when it starts to be the commonplace, and this is the main issue systemically, that's where we see a lot of breakdown occur in the body. I know I go fast. I'd love to cover tons of stuff, so please, but don't feel bad about interrupting, jumping up and saying, hey, wait a minute, hold on, I had something that I need to clear up about this, because it'll help everybody. So I'd love to make this as interactive and as fun as possible. With that toxicity, we really need to watch out for big, heavy players. Heavy metals are a major, major concern. We are constantly bombarded by them with everything from food to vaccines. We have it inside our water. It's in our air. One of the interesting things is that every single vehicle tailpipe is exhausting some level of lead. So if you live anywhere near a car, we all do, you are getting lead exposure on a routine basis. It doesn't have to be coming from a place where you can see it in paint or in water or plastics. It's in the air. It's unique because, again, we have a lot of use and foods that are actually contaminated with mercury, with arsenic, with different other types of nickel and cadmium. Some of these are actually good for us in small doses, and a lot of them, when they get too large, become major issues, and we want to clear them out. So heavy metals is one of those where a lot of people experiencing any level of hormone dysfunction should test for heavy metal toxicity, and that's a big piece in this and understanding, because it might give you a really big insight as to, oh, that's maybe something that and I can take care of that. I can actually work on that myself for detoxification. Make sure that you're trying to get a hair follicle analysis test. A lot of times blood testing won't help you, because most of the time the heavy metals are locked up inside cells and tissues and aren't being expressed on a routine basis, yet they can be totally affecting the brain, the way that we produce our different hormones, or locked inside the thyroid in certain locations. So the concentrations can be very different, but the little bits of oil that our body secretes on the actual outside of our hair follicle contains a month-long sample of what that is in terms of our body's output. So it'll tell us what we're dealing with in a much better way. So hair follicle analysis is critical in this process.
Where would you get something like that?
If you got a good doctor that thinks about things, they're going to know that. If you don't, you can actually do your own home analysis. You can actually go on. I have resources and links to where all I do is click on a little website, charts a credit card. Average full panel, all heavy metals that affect a person's about $450. So it's one of those to where if you're interested in understanding about heavy metal toxicity and doing it yourself, you can do that. There is ways of taking care of those things. One of the big ones that most people don't know how to deal with because we were told they were good for us is antibiotics. But it's definitely something where it destroys hormones. The reason it does this is actually not that it does anything like disrupting the hormone site most of the time. It's because it kills our internal digestive flora and gets rid of our probiotic, because 93, 92% and change of our hormones are actually constructed from the food particulates and everything inside our intestines. And when things aren't going well in here, so that's one. Then the big thing for me is when we have an outbreak of Crohn's disease, IBS, IBD, diverticulitis, C. diff, H. pylori, all these stomach-affecting illnesses, you know your hormones are going to be disrupted. That's just they go hand in hand. So with that creation issue inside our bodies, we really want to see the change, the change for things to happen to get ourselves into better health. Sorry, Thea. But antibiotics are interesting because it's one of those where a lot of people think low-level antibiotic, no real big deal. But a lot of studies that come away from Australia, Austria, Germany, Norway show that even 2 times in your life can have a long-term effect. And it doesn't take anything more than a Z-Pack, which used to be like once-a-week prescription systems for people. They just carry them around with them, and anytime they had a sniffle, they'd start taking antibiotics. It's definitely one of those where it has an effect. And it's mainly because people don't know how to regenerate their bacteria well enough and to get the right levels back in their body. But it's one of those where we can, again, correct this. It's not a problem. It just takes some time. We've got to be focused on it. Plastics is probably the most recent, and obviously I would say the most long-term detrimental. And in the plastics, I would also classify this as everything from fertilizers, pesticides, larvicides, fungicides, anything that actually will kill a biotic system is going to be in the same sort of scenario here. Plastics are the ones that will create the deformation, the actual movement of the receptor site, and cause it to shut down to where sometimes you lose them permanently. And it takes as long as it takes to regrow the tissue or the cell for you to be able to have new opportunities for opening that receptor site back up. When we drink a lot of, again, plastic containers, we microwave things, we've gone through a lot of understanding about how we were doing the convenient, fast-friendly, happy-go-lucky food systems, and then we found out, oh, that causes a ton of problems. Pesticides like DDT, Roundup, the glyphosates, Ancient Orange, all these things that were used on different occasions have a long-term lasting environmental effect, and we are still feeling the effects of those today, even though we actually, I think, discontinued widespread DDT use in the late 60s. We are still feeling it. It's definitely one of those that's where those types of disruptions can occur. Tap water is the most controversial probably on this list, because everybody would actually say up until that line, okay, I get it, no, wait a minute. But the reason I mentioned tap water is so specifically is because it actually does a lot of just general dysfunction and destruction on the body in an area that's very unique, and that's just the thyroid gland. So chlorine, fluorine, and bromine are 3 compounds that are found inside tap water that there really is a very stringent way of removing, but it's very difficult to do that removal, to where everyone's, at least some point in time, gone to a restaurant or whatever and drank a material of city-produced potable water, and that creates this toxicity. So when we accept chlorine, fluorine, and bromine, it shuts our iodine receptors down in our thyroid and causes that dysfunction to occur. So major contributor to this issue. The last one, the next one is actually, I would say, a little more my forte. When it comes from detoxification, the idea is we always want to pull things out of the body, and then we want to push good things back in. So a lot of times nutritional deficiencies is everything from vitamin D to magnesium to getting the right types of vitamin C back in the body. All the constituents that we would normally produce, all of our hormones in our bodies, and actually get them to be in good levels and good concentrations, are in this category. We are severely iodine deficient as a population, even more so on vitamin D. These 2 compounds unlock and control most of our hormone production, And a lot of times our hormones longevity, and that's one of those things we may talk a little bit here before we get to the end. A lot of hormones are meant to be in your system for much longer than they can survive because compounds inside your blood are tearing them apart and they're not allowing them to be protected. So vitamin D is one of those critical ones where we see that very, very often. It's just not able to withstand the actual system that it's built in and be able to last. But nutritional deficiencies is really one of the best things about Artisan's Palate that we can, again, do a lot to change if we know what to specifically take for ourselves. So we'll learn a little bit about that next. And the last one that I think is so critical for people just to go away with today with just a basic kind of understanding for is the EMF disruption. So because hormones are so sensitive in their creation and the way that they operate inside the body, all it takes is being next to anything from a cellular device for too long to being inside a room that has Wi-Fi, laying or sleeping anywhere near anything that's emitting any kind of hum. This is telling you that there's something going on in here. Metal is moving and EMFs are being produced. Electromagnetic frequencies are what get into everything from our brain system to our stomach system and can vibrate in a way that tells our system to not be healthy. One of the things is, again, a lot of people who are anywhere between 400 to 500 feet away from high tension power lines more than likely ended up with some type of asthma, allergy, or some type of skin dysfunction because of EMF toxicity. So that's a very commonplace material there. So EMFs are huge because we can't get away from them very easily. You can drive out to Death Valley, sit inside the salt flats there in bad water, and probably be pretty safe. But then the idea is, where else do you go? But it's unique because you can at least do a few things, like removing your flat screen TV from your bedroom, getting actual large, iHome devices right there next to your head as you're sleeping so comfortably on your pillow. And all night long, it's just reprogramming everything in terms of all the actual hormone production inside your body.
How far away should you have those things? Like
15 feet for small devices.
iPad and your phone, you should have it pretty much out of your room.
Correct. 15 feet for small, 30 feet for large. And it's unique because you actually can hire a friend of mine who does EMF surveys on homes, businesses, and anything of that nature to find out if you're a person who's working in or living near a major device that's producing an issue. And it's funny because we have people who go through the actual suggestion systems, adding in whether it's crystal systems, removing electronics out, and they'll go, I never heard a sound. And I'm usually up every 15 minutes most of the times when I'm sleeping. And now I don't hear anything. I go to sleep. I wake up 8 hours later. How does that have such an effect? And it is something that's that critical sometimes. So very, very interesting in this day and age.
What about a home phone? Is a home phone?
A corded line phone that doesn't have a handset is completely safe when it comes to EMF detection. But if it's a handset, it is emitting 260 hertz every single second of the day, and if you're in between it and the base station, it's going right through your brain. That's the way it works.
Oh no, that's a
in the base, it's just emitting in an area of 15 feet. But it's funny how
about it, and it freaks me out. But it depends anything about it.
It's funny how we again come to this whole concept, and it's because we actually work on the average. The Earth's frequency is 5.7, 5.85. It ranges between that depending on if we're closer to the sun or further away from the sun. So the Schumann's frequency is our frequency. That's 5.7 hertz. Your phone emits 2.6 gigahertz. So it is literally thousands of times stronger, and that's the funny thing about the Earth. We're meant to be at a very low vibration of influence, not when we get around devices that are emitting these high EMF fields.
So if I have a printer, a computer, a television,
landline,
your 2 cell phones,
you're gonna blow up now.
all in one bedroom.
That's tough. The unique thing is they do have grounding sheets that can help. Quartz crystal is fantastic to put anywhere between you and a device that you don't want to have disruption. Quartz crystal actually sucks in EMF and isolates the frequencies. So you can use different types of rocks in order to...
Do you need
how many, one little crystal or huge?
I know people who, what they do literally is they'll actually buy, say, a grab bag at a rock and gem and mineral show for like $60 that has 200 little pieces of quartz, and they will just put it underneath their entire mattress and line their mattress. And that's enough to where it actually will dissipate the effects on your bed, at least your bed.
So at work, in the office that I sit in, there's 3 screens,
Okay.
2 towers, and there's 3 printers and a scanner.
All Wi-Fi?
Yes.
Of course.
And then the boxes, the Verizon boxes there on the wires everywhere.
Of course. So the interesting thing when it comes, again, they make grounding mouse pads, which are fantastic because that connects you right back to the earth and keeps you with that. And then so you just keep your hand on that, and that keeps yourself functional. They have grounding workstation mats you put underneath so you can rest your feet on. And then again, the idea is right at your desk, you would just put 3 or 4. They only have to be about 5 or 6 feet apart in order to maintain kind of an an EMF defense screen, and that's all that matters. And it can be, yeah. So if you go to the farmer's market on the weekend down there, Jeremy's a wonderful gentleman who has a little table of all the different, crystals, and you can get more elaborate. My office, because of it being geotechnical and geology focused, we have the geodes that are literally like 4 or 5 feet high.
Can I wear it as a necklace?
You can, and there are a lot of products out there that actually do a fantastic job at helping for personal protection that way and keeping it on your body. And there is some benefit to that.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I have a class in it.
Fantastic.
How am I going to explain Christmas?
If they are on a home security system, but no, true incandescent, just the standard Thomas CFLs do. CFLs are actually the highest mercury-containing compound that you can have in your house.
CFLs were those.
CFLs are the curly lights that everybody had to get to save energy. Those are the most toxic compound you could possibly put in your house. And if you break one, it is absolutely dangerous. It's not even funny.
Those curly,
The
The
so we should go
CFLs.
back to our regular bulbs?
Yes. If you can find them.
If you can find them. Yeah, no. When I heard that GE was going to stop making them, I actually have like 400 light bulbs in my house.
Oh, yeah?
Like in my garage, just because I didn't want to ever have to worry about that ever again. But it is, well, in my garage they're waiting. So, and it's funny because
So all those energy efficient ones, all of them have it, or just those ones that are sterile?
anything that's a complex fluorescent light, the material that the gases they put inside that bulb is extremely deadly. Yes.
You actually read the box, it's a hazardous waste thing, you can't throw in.
Can't throw it away, and most people do. They just don't.
They do, but you can read the box, it actually has to be disposed of.
Because I just got one some at Costco, and I wasn't even sure what it was. Like, it has like that weird floral type base to it, but it has a bulb on it, but it's supposed to be energy efficient.
There's LEDs too.
The LED is different. Now, LED is awesome.
Yeah.
You're going to spend like $30 a bulb, so that's the only issue. But yeah, CFLs, huge issue. Huge issue. So when it comes to natural solutions for hormones and for health, probably the reason why everybody's sitting here and have gone through all this fun exercise we've dealt with up until now, the big key place for just about everybody that I can say is get control of your iodine. Iodine is so important. It is the most critical mineral in the hormone game because your thyroid requires it, and it's grand central station for every other signal in the body. So your blood actually goes through your thyroid gland every 17 minutes. So your entire volume of blood is sending signals to your thyroid. Your thyroid produces all of the other signals that cascade up to the brain to tell the brain how to do its thing inside all of its little organelles, and down to the visceral organs to tell it what to consume, how to produce the hormones that are necessary to take them back up to the brain. And this relationship is all controlled here. When this is gone, when this is not working, when things are not firing properly here, again, it's just this cascade of other issues that we need to correct. You can test serum iodine, something that's not part of the standard CBC that most people need to understand, and they would be able to immediately pin their finger and go, I'm iodine deficient. Look at it right there on the test and know from that point that it's a big piece in your lifestyle. The unique thing about iodine, again, is it's multifunctional, but it actually does a fantastic job for energizing and activating the receptor sites inside that thyroid gland. So a lot of people go through the conversation of, I have some sort of thyroid dysfunction, I was told iodine's bad for me. And yes, at this point in time, it might be, because your body isn't able to receive it. So it doesn't know how to absorb it, which means it technically just floats in the blood and can cause other issues. But there are detoxification programs and protocols for pulling bromine, chlorine, and fluorine out of the body that we need to go through in order to get you healthy so you can regenerate the function in your thyroid. Again, improper immune function and hypothyroidism are technically hand in hand, which is why Hashimoto's is so commonly the case, because eventually when you don't have enough iodine, your immune system fails and your thyroid fails, which creates that Hashimoto's complex. And it is, again, completely curable. There's no reason for you to have to deal with it. A lot of people don't understand that they actually, for a long time, and I think they still do, but I would hope no one would actually go that route. They will still actually, if you have hyperthyroidism, give you a radioactive iodine drink that you slug down, and you actually purposefully kill off your thyroid to stop the hyperactivity. And that was the solution system for getting hormone balance. Not really smart.
Wow.
You need that gland. Like I say, very, very interesting. When it comes to overall hormone health, like when we see people who are working at trying to, and they're struggling at this process, and they're really feeling the effects of having hormone dysfunction. Like I say, they're the ones who, when we started this class, hormones are controlling their life, they're not in control of their own. Then this is one of those key critical pieces where you can finally take a drop of this in water and see some control come back to your life. And once you get a little bit, it's a process, it takes some time, it's not going to happen immediately, but it is one of those where it starts to right the ship. And we really want to get on that pattern. When we mentioned serotonin, one of the most amazing and beautiful things that we have available to us is the camu berry. If you're a person who finds that you are overburning your serotonin, not able to really find happiness or euphoria or any kind of just really, really good moods happening to yourself, and this is one of those, it's a huge question. I ask people constantly. Sitting in session with them, talking about their coaching strategy. If you just sat down and everything was quiet, are you happy? And if they go, nope, not even close, you go, okay, we got to work on this, because this is the blood chemical, and camu has the high enough vitamin C concentration to boost our serotonin naturally. So you don't have to take 5-HTP, which again is like eating someone else's hormones produced somewhere else. And yes, even with it coming from a graphonia seed or being an extract, that's nice, but that's the plant's version of 5-HTP, not yours. You make your own, you just got to get back into utilizing it properly and keeping it working for itself. This goes back to that whole concept of when you don't sleep, or if you have sleeplessness, you should always be trying to boost your serotonin back the next day, because you've obviously just drained a little more of it than what you should have, and you want to be replenishing. So take a little extra vitamin C from the camu berry, use that as a great way to start boosting your mood. Again, antioxidants, fantastic. Vitamin C, fantastic. Everything about this will work for you and really give you back that really good sense of happiness coming back to your system for and this is just happiness. Like I say, that's just happiness. That's just the ability to laugh at a joke, not look at traffic as being the worst thing you could ever do with your life. It's very different when you do something, and I'll mention it now, like Mucuna. Mucuna does dopamine. Now, dopamine has a very unique function because it actually is euphoria. And that's the ability to actually get so happy that you're happy for days. And that's one of those things where people go, I just want to be happy for an hour. What are you talking about? I try to watch a movie and I can't even get through one of those being happy. And it's funny. So it's unique because dopamine is one of these things that we very often don't understand because of our sugar addictions, caffeine addictions, all of the other heavy illicit drug addictions, pharmaceutical addictions are destroying and not allowing for our body to even produce enough to keep it in our system in order to create long-standing happiness or euphoria, the idea of being happy for a long time. So it's really, really important and key and critical to where, believe it or not, making a drink, and I think it's actually in one of the ones here at Artisan's Palate, boosting dopamine and serotonin at the same time in the anger management, right? Yeah. Fantastic for you just starting your day off right, not getting beaten by stress, not letting everything crumble down, and getting into that worry and that fear zone where life's just not in control for yourself. So Camu, Makuna, wonderful for boosting happiness.
So I understand caffeine has a lot of bad effects on people, but you said it also depletes the dopamine?
Correct. Correct. But anytime you get, how would you say that? Anytime you get overexcited, dopamine is going to be produced. This is the unique thing about all the habits that we hear about on everything from intervention, from heroin to whatever. It's revving up the dopamine and you're feeling amazing while it's happening, and then you're completely down and nothing's there anymore. And that cycle is one where it programs the body to just not be in a good place. So it's a definite piece. Caffeine does that because, again, we're drinking drinks a lot of times with anhydrous caffeine, synthetically derived caffeine that's in the order of 120, 150, 200. I've seen drinks up to 500 milligrams. And again, it sounds fun. Kind of used to be one of those types of people, but the idea is natural caffeine and just good metabolism is all the energy you'll ever need. You don't need to really do anything crazy in order to try to fix your body when it comes to energy. If you're feeling tired, fatigued, it's usually metabolism, not energy. And I know that's tough for people to kind of break those two apart, but they are very separate. So we want to work on boosting metabolism, and that's one of our great talks that we had earlier this year. That people are looking for more information, they can definitely contact us, either Pia here or myself, and get a link to you so you can even watch it because we have them all recorded. So it's unique because we'll switch out of happy for 2 seconds and get into cellular regeneration and the HGH complex, one of the hormones we didn't mention, but HGH is hypercritical. Human growth hormone is one of our most essential pieces for keeping cellular vitality and longevity in our body. It's very unique because we see a complete die-off after the age of 50 for most individuals on their HGH production levels. And if that wasn't the case, to where we see people who live on the island of Okinawa, a lot of other unique, very remote native peoples, they have HGH till the day they're gone. And we live 40, 50 years sometimes without it. And that's why we get old, crookedy, rookedy, not knowing how to keep ourselves healthy and functional, is because HGH isn't there. So it's cellular regeneration that's so critical, and we're so lucky because there's such an amazing, beautiful, wonderful goji berry that we're able to actually enjoy, and it tastes delicious in a drink. And you can make anything from chocolate to to pudding to, I don't even know, like I see a lot of people even now making marshmallows and stuff out of that, just like we do with peppermint. But the goji berry is one of the few foods, and that's one of the unique things about it, to us to get a natural form of ability to produce HGH. Most other HGH has to be injected, and that's usually not good. It's coming from a cow or some sort of conventional dairy system, and it's just not functional in the human body. But goji berry will start to help us with that. So we talked about this a lot in our beauty class for tissue regeneration, but here it's so critical because, again, like I say, when we have that broken down hormone receptor site and it's no longer functioning, and it's completely dead and necrotic and it's not going to reopen, you have to regenerate the cell in order for it to actually go back to the way it should be in order for you to get this. And every single part of your body regenerates every 7 years. Different cycles, different pieces, but there isn't a cell, a molecule of you that's the same in a 7-year cycle. So understand, if you start reprogramming your body today, you'll feel the effects 7 years from now on all your systems if you can keep that habit, that behavior pattern up, and keep that new healthy lifestyle. So fantastic way of getting yourself back to good overall health and function. We always talk about MSM, and we always try to mention sulfur as being one of the key critical elements as well for the idea of getting good hormone health. But the reason I think, again, we talk about this one is because of it working to produce the enzymes to actually digest your food properly for you to be able to actually create the hormones that you need. There's a lot that goes on in the liver as well, too. And most of us have sticky, bile-filled, congested, stagnant livers that need to be cleaned and moved out because we are a typical society that abuse the liver a little too much, and we don't do a lot to clean it back out. So very few people who go on a really good Friday or Saturday night bender will the next day wake up and have nettle tea with a little bit of dandelion root and some lemon juice in order to kind of flush it all out. So this chronic accumulation issue in the liver creates that slowness, and that again starts affecting the way our hormones are absorbed and operating in our body. So most people also, one of the huge pieces of me dispelling some great information, if you have a thyroid disorder and you're not testing your liver function at the same time that you're giving your sample for your thyroid panel, you need to get that process going. Your liver is what tells the thyroid producing T3, T4 back and forth for the conversion system, and they are talking to each other every second of the day. It takes a little longer for your blood to completely go through the liver, so it's not quite 17 minutes. It's about a half an hour or so, but it is one of those where they are intercommunicating, and a lot of times people get diagnosed with thyroid disorders when it's actually a broken down liver complex, and that's where their issue started. So they start treating the thyroid and not actually working ever on the liver, and then 10 years goes by and both are now gone. So it's unique because this process is one where we really want to get into a better understanding about. So I mentioned this one because I'm learning a lot, and I always love the fact that when I can bring in so I've never actually said really anything about this, but there's a beautiful compound in this bag, and I know we titled it very, very well at Raw Revelations in order to actually cause the concept of serenity. But the compound is pearl, and this is actually crushed down, ground pearl out of the oyster that everybody talks about. Most people only think works well in necklaces. But it's funny because this actual compound is so amazing for hormone balance and its grounding effects, and actually taking away a lot of that environmental EMF toxicity and pollution, and getting your body to actually, again, feel calm. And something we don't normally be able to see ourselves getting an operation for. So instead of being forced to go out at sundown, sit on a rock, take your shoes off, stick them in the dirt, hands up and just being happy and thankful right as the sun sets. If you can't do that action every day, which it's amazing if you ever want to try that, I do it over there in Meadowview. This is the way to do it for yourself at home. So the Serenity compound here with the pearl complex and the rest of the actual herbs here, albiza flower, asparagus root, really, really good grounding and very good hormone balancing material, and reishi mushroom, one of the queen of mushrooms when it comes to health. Definitely worthwhile for hormone balance overall. So pearl, grounding effects, getting your body to understand that, again, we go back to where we started in the beginning of this talk, breathing, relaxing, calming, and actually letting yourself get to that point instead of just slamming the TV off, slamming the computer down, and then going to sleep and thinking that's okay, will start to change the way your body works. You're setting up a pattern there. You're setting up a cycle. Again, it's very funny now because my kids are 4 and 3. Pretty much whatever they watch on TV that day is something to do with their dream that night. Something, like it's got a piece in it. So it's very funny now. I'm seeing this direct correlation where I'm like, okay, and we watch what they watch and we're like, I don't know, we'll see what this happens in the dream world. We'll see how this gets pulled out. But it's very funny. Adults don't view themselves that way. We're ultra protective of our kids sometimes, and then we just go to ourselves and we have no issue. We don't think of ourselves in that same light. But definitely something where it comes to ritual pattern behaviors and getting ourselves more in the relaxation state will overall enhance. A big, yes, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, so you're talking about like when the sun goes down and after work and that whole cycle at the end of the day, what would you suggest as far as like kind of winding down TV, phone? I mean, so many people are sitting on Facebook before they go to bed and they just put their phone next to their bed and fall asleep.
I know. It's funny how the iPhone actually has an app to tell you whether or not you're sleeping well or not, and it wakes you up if you're having a problem. So it's one of those where, you're on Facebook, you're reading the most recent, whether it's political or whatever news of, family members, and, you go through all those emotions, and then you put it down and you're like, I should be okay. And then you go, why do I have anxiety? I don't understand. I got to, and then you get up and you pace. And, so it is interesting. A lot of people need to see the sun go down, truthfully. And that's one of the interesting patterns and behaviors of getting yourselves into, and just being able to look. The colors do something that I think has some part in that, and when you watch a sunset. But then it's the idea when you see the shrinking light, it actually starts taking the photoreceptors in the eyes and turning them from serotonin production, melatonin production and serotonin utilization, and flips them over to melatonin utilization and serotonin production. So when you go into your house, if your house is just as bright at noon as what it is at 9, you're setting yourself up for a miscommunication in your actual hormone pathways.
Right.
So if you can live in low light, then that helps. If you can turn, like to put the kids down, like that's for me. It's like I put the kids down, most of the lights go completely off, and it's the idea of everything's just relaxed. I'm huge into the idea of, I love always making like a little tonic tea, something that has the Serenity or the Camu, Adrenal Stress Ease, our Coffee Fix, like any of these great, just something that you taste and you enjoy and you love, because that's how you'll sleep then. You'll actually see that emotion carried through. So, yeah, I know it's tough with sports whenever they're on or whatever, you're yelling at the TV and, you're really into it. It takes a lot of times 3 to 4 hours to calm. That's again an issue I think for us. If I talk to most of my health practitioners and especially people who work in India, they talk about the idea that they can instantaneously relax. I mean, it's one of those where we have a sluggishness to it just as much as we do the rest of our issues, but it's because we're not practiced in it. There, they start at 7 with everyone learning how to breathe properly, how to focus their minds, how to do meditation. Here, we wait until they're 25 and have problems. And then it's like, well, maybe I should think about some stuff. So it's really interesting how we set ourselves up for some of these issues. But I would like to say that it's one of those where give yourself at least 2 hours, especially from food. That's one of the big issues. Is a lot of people need it at least, and that's if you have good digestion. If you got really sluggish digestion, a lot of people need to stop eating at 3 p.m. because it's going to take 4 to 5, 6 hours sometimes before the food's actually gone. One of those things when it comes to weight loss that so many people are struggling with is that anything left in the stomach that's not processed properly, when you go to sleep and your body changes its actual profile, just gets stored, just gets put on as fat. It doesn't know what to do with it because the rest of this system isn't really going to be working again for a few hours, and it tries to appropriate the material as best it can. Again, it's very, very unique how that process. So not eating late. A lot of people, I really would say, just don't eat after sundown. It's such a good rule. If it's dark out, the rare occasion, I understand, that's life. But if you're every day, 9:30 is hitting, and that's when you pop the microwave dinner out, and you're like, okay, you turn the TV on, and that's when you finally get to eat, then you got some organization things going on there that we got to work on when it comes to focusing on health. But it is one of those where a lot of people need about 2 hours, and you can help the speed of that relaxation with a lot of these compounds that we're talking about by taking a tea and getting yourself to be relaxed, being nice to your loved one, spouse, or whatever, and actually rubbing their feet or giving them a little back rub or essential oils, things of that. It's funny how that process will actually get you better in contact. Not only maybe, let's just say, improve your relationship if you actually spend some time, but the idea is you'll finally see relaxation come. I'm really big into nutritional bathing, so a lot of times I hit the tub. I've got 4 or 5 cups of Epsom salt and Dead Sea salt and all these different compounds in there. And I lay in for half an hour, blank out, let everything just kind of wash away, get up, take care of a couple things for tomorrow morning, and then go to sleep because that's easy for me. And I've developed a pattern that's kind of what I like to do. So when that happens, I'm very, very happy. And it really does promote a lot of that work. So it's variable for people, but I would say a common rule is eating 2 to 3 hours, no good. Food, the TV concept depends on the show. Truthfully, Beverly Hills Housewives, definitely not. It's totally going to ramp you up. I can just tell you now. If you've got 3 or 4 recorded, you're going to watch all of them. So the thing is that
Netflix person, you just watch it.
everything exactly. Then I do. I finally saw Breaking Bad. Yeah, I watched it in a week and a half, and so all 5 seasons. I was up till every morning till 4 a.m. It was crazy. But it's interesting how, and your body will tell you. Again, most people here, the issue is they stay up past 10 or 11, they're dead the next morning. It's interesting for me. I usually don't sleep until 2 because I go to sleep from 2 until 6, and that's kind of my cycle, and my life works well that way. But I also really, really control my health. So it's one of those where it works for me, not a recommendation for a lot of people.
So would you say that these disrupt a lot of our sleep, especially if we're having them late at night?
Yes. So let me just jump to 2 more, and then we'll get to where we'll exactly talk about that one. Palate tea, fantastic tea material for people to be able to finally take away the 1990s boogeyman for health issues, and that's candida. Again, yeast overgrowth inside the intestines does the same issue that we were talking about when it came to not having proper liver function, and we want to try to balance candida and yeast overgrowth as best we can. We can never get rid of it, so the idea of candida, detox dieting to where you eat like 3 things a day and one of them's popcorn and styrofoam or something as crazy as I've heard that diet is. You might need that, honestly, for a time, but then the idea is you slowly get yourself away from there, and you can process sugar better when your insulin's working well. But when it's overgrowth, then we want to see ways of collecting that. The best way for an easy person to do a cleanse is 2 weeks of drinking this tea every day. So twice a day, 3 times a day, however much you can. But a Palate cleanse, just on that, will get rid of molds, funguses, bacteriums. A lot of the candida can be a big, big benefit. It is a really, really tasty tea.
Is that eating other things too, or just doing them?
You can just do that if you want for 2 weeks, but it helps when you're combining that with a few of these other practices to kind of do a true detox and really working on your body. So again, detoxification is critical for change. The reason I mention this is because it's not that there's one exact compound that I would say that we love to work with MSM. We love to have detoxify and TMG as a part of this, that actually can help detoxify the body very, very proliferately and really see some big benefits come in. But I don't know of any other way to get a human body at this point in time. We haven't developed the sound and light therapies and made them public and possible for everyone to get that are truthfully better than detoxification. But when it comes to hormones, when it comes to what's affecting the hormones, when this whole system's just been disrupted, it's detoxification that is the kind of clinch pin of making sure that you can get control of your body. Just eating a bunch of really good food can help, and over time that's going to detoxify, but really going through a process, and that's one of those where a lot of people don't jump into certain cleanses and detoxes for themselves because it's scary, it's tough. Like I'm right now on a 10-day water fast just for myself, and it's one of those like crazy fun things, but like without a person helping or me thinking about this and really planning and organizing it, I would freak out. Like this, what your body does when you don't eat is crazy. But it's very interesting how it's beneficial as well too, and there's a purpose for it. A lot of people will do detoxing every day because detoxing's fun. And it's it's catchy and it's kind of popular right now, and that's not healthy either. You want to detox for a reason. Pull stuff out, get rid of it, and then, like I say, put good things back in where you just detox stuff out. And then let your body kind of heal for a little while, cycle through, and see what changes you did affect, and then go back at it. So it's a very, very big piece in understanding things. But I don't know of really any way more simpler than putting that. Detoxification, if you're trying to get hormone balance, is going to be part of it. It's going to be part of it. So very.
Doing 10 days just water right now?
Just water. I take that. I did have a little bit of beet juice after they went in and did like a little bit of a roto-rooter on my ears on Tuesday. But yeah, no, it's been crazy, and we'll talk about that in a little while.
What day is 10?
I'm on 9, so I'm done tomorrow.
Wow.
Tomorrow at sundown, I'm done. I'm excited. I'm actually not going to eat for another 3 days, but it's just going to be soups and things like that to kind of balance things out and get it to where it comes back in right, and really working on the base probiotic levels and doing some different things. But it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. So let me just say that part. But a very, very interesting process. So again, key phrase from this class is you can, if you don't feel like you are today, be in control of this process. You do have the power, the potential. There's enough information. This isn't the dark ages. There's enough knowledge out there, enough people who are willing to help anyone get through their situations if they find that right person. As a health coach, again, working with somebody, trying to step them through their process, however it's going to go, let them see where the possible pitfalls are going to be, understand where we'd like to focus energy. It helps. It helps a lot to have that guide. But it is one of these to where we can see a lot of personal change just from this class go away by reducing our total pharmaceutical use. There isn't a pharmaceutical compound out there that I know of that doesn't affect a hormone. That's kind of how it creates change. But it just does it so rapidly that a lot of times it's not healthy. Even though it feels better, or it might give you some relief, or things are and again, there's places and times for everything, but the idea is if you can slowly kind of cut away your dependency, especially on the lifestyle pharmaceuticals, diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol, anxiety, those types of things, that's going to change the way your body works, hands down. It's a process, and I don't expect anybody to, like I say, definitely don't recommend just jumping off anything, but the idea is see that as a goal. Talk to even your doctor and say, hey, listen, I'd like to get off this. What do I do? And if they give you no answers, find somebody who says, oh, there is a plan that you can do this. Cutting the electronic tethers. It's very, very critical in this process. And I dare people to do just give yourself a week. Like we're talking about, moving some stuff just a little further away. Plug your material in an outlet that's actually opposite the head of your bed, and with the TV and that sort of thing as well too. Cut it at a time to where you're like, listen. And you can set your TV to shut off at a time. It's made for your kids, but it might as well be used for adults who don't know how to control themselves too. So it is one of those places. The computer is the same thing. I know we all are busy. But it's interesting how I've come to some sort of basic understanding about life. I would hate to feel at the very end of things that I allowed myself to believe that whatever it was I was working on or going to get done was more important than being happy and functional and living a great long life than what I do a lot of times. And that's a big place for people to kind of switch their perceptions. We do have a big focus on being busy all the time, and we think by checking and scrolling Instagram and by Facebook, we're going to catch something that's so astronomically important that we will be able to tell the world from that point and be the first one in our friends network to share a post that will change the and it's one of those where that's nice and there is a time and place for it, but you also got to take a look at what's your focus, and that's so big about this process. If you're focused on health, you probably want to change that pattern. So the electronic tether is an interesting issue. Working around that much electronic equipment is a really big piece of that, and not understanding, like we talked about, some of the simple protection devices that are nothing more than putting a pretty rock on your desk and going, aha, I'm protected. That's sometimes all it takes. But this is key because the eyes are telling the body a lot. The skin is telling the body a lot. What you're eating, again, is telling the body quite a bit. So we want to see that all kind of works. So natural foods becomes this best way that I think anybody out there, if you can just stop buying everything in boxes and bags, instant prep, no thought, microwave systems, just add boiling water. The thing that goes into making that food available is usually not good for you. It's good for convenience, which that's fine when it's necessary. But for the most part, yeah, you're just shortchanging yourself. And I know it sounds fun, and that's the weird place that this 10-day fast actually did something for me. Was it made me go, yeah, I used to love cooking, and I got busy. And it's been a fun time being busy, but it's definitely one of those where I'm like, I'm going to go back to actually making something instead of just, picking it up and doing that. The whole food solution is really easy for people who are on the go. Grab an apple. It goes with you. So that's pretty simple. Like I say, not hard. So when you see something and it looks like food, right when you look at it, then that's good. So grab it and eat it. And that's one of those very easy ways of starting this process. I don't know of as many places, like I say, that I love. And the biggest thing I would have to say, though, on that, this store is a little bit off that exception. because most of the stuff in here is amazing, even if it is convenient, because somebody went through the thought process to really make it that way. But the majority of material, the reason there are 7 gas stations at every intersection is because you're going to stop at one and then want to make sure you have the same crappy food available at all of them. And the idea is if you can just think a little bit ahead of schedule, then you might be able to find some better solutions for yourself. Again, the American family has lost the concept of the home cooked meal, and that's something we did between the 70s and the 90s. It's good to bring it back, and it's best when we're actually thinking about health to bring it back, bring it back for yourselves. So, like I say, this has been a ton of fun. I know there's a lot of information, so if there's any questions, we'll keep the broadcast actually going and be able to, field any questions about any particular items tonight or your own personal ones, because again, everybody learns. But thank you very much for coming. Thank you for joining. If you're joining on Ustream here and catching us at YouTube later, if you're looking for more information, feel free to send an email to joseph@rrsuperfoods.com or brilliancenutrition@gmail.com or find me at the website brilliancenutrition.com. We are located today at Artisan's Palate here in beautiful Temecula, and Pia is fantastic for everything she does when I'm not here on my once-a-month talks. Always come in and find out great information from her, so thank you so much for joining. Yes?
A little bit about methylation. I know
Yes.
saying a little bit about methylation is kind of an oxymoron.
I know. It's so huge. Yeah, so the interesting thing about methylation and hormone function, and I didn't want to bring this up until we got to questions, because this is a big key piece to it. Like I said at the beginning, you're in control. Everybody out there right now is scared to death of this MTHFR thing that's been put onto the news about your body being dysfunction and just geared towards cancer. Not true. What's happening is we're being over-toxified, and we can't get rid of the compounds that are coming into our system, and so the epigenetic signal of having not enough methylation groups turns the MTHFR gene code on. As soon as you are taking MSM or TMG or eating beets on a routine basis, good high quality beets, you are getting methylation compounds back into your system. Or like we talked about, if you're detoxing and not adding more toxic compounds back into the body, you are going to slowly build up better reserves of methylation groups, and that switch in the epigenetic code turns off. And now, for some reason, you tested MTHFR, and now you don't. Like, what happened? It's unique because we're not talking too much about epigenetics today, but methylation is a huge one that ties it in. And so what methylation does is methylation is kind of like the UPS FedEx system for the human body. It's the piece that actually goes in and grabs a nutrient item and pulls, whether it's vitamin C or sulfur or iodine or whatever, in through the intestinal wall and into the bloodstream. And when you don't have enough methylation, you're not absorbing nutrient compounds, so you're getting malnourished, and then you're also not detoxifying things out of the cells. So they're carrying things out as well as they're bringing stuff in. So the interesting thing is that for everybody to kind of go away with a number that'll shock you, the average carnivore burns about 1,800 methylation groups per cell per day. That's about the operating speed if you wanted to kind of look at it. The average vegetarian vegan's about 1,200 to 1,400. So it's not that they're amazing and they just have methylation reserves to boot. They really do need help just as well. But it is one of those where there's a little bit of a savings there. So spending some time on a much more vegetarian-esque diet can help. It can help. But methylation is very key in this process of getting things out of the blood, out of the lymph, out of the whole process. And again, understand where the tie-in, I think, for a lot of people, cancer begins because your body can't deal with whatever's there. So it just shoves a bunch of cells around it and causes an overgrowth to occur, and that's the beginning of a tumor. So it's unique when we get an overtoxicity in a particular area, then we develop a colon tumor. It's because your digestive path has been so full of toxic compounds for so long, it's got no choice. That's the way it's going to deal with that problem. It's actually trying to keep you alive, which is sad that we look at cancer so quickly as death, but it doesn't actually work that way. So this is a big key piece in that. And if you're methylating properly, then your body's absorbing all your nutrients. The B vitamin that's located right there in the middle of the table is a fully methylated B complex, to where your body doesn't have to work to add the methyl groups in order to absorb the B vitamins. So very critical in people who are low methyl function or producing the positive result on the MTHFR gene code. To get ourselves working better, we have to allow for methylation to occur. So very, very key and critical piece in hormone health. And I think we've got Glee's coming in at the end of the month talking about thermography and the understanding for lymphatic and inflammation and finding areas, detecting areas of issue in the body. The thermographic scans really helps us understand how the body is operating and where we're carrying our information. A lot of people don't realize that with a thermographic scan, if I could see that way, I could find your shoulder pain, your knee pain, your little bit of IBS and everything from a distance. You carry it with you every single day. And that thermographic scan actually gives you a profile output to understand that. And again, non-invasive and doesn't cause any actual damage to the body like any kind of MRI or CAT scan or any sort of other radiation-based technology does. And you can do a very good job if you're dealing with a problem, scanning every 3 months or 6 months and actually routinely going with no negative effects to the body system. So very, very big benefit. And a lot of great early warning connections towards the idea of healing. So yeah, methylation is one of those where fantastic conversation. Definitely a part of this process of understanding things. Yes?
Someone who has a severe candida condition, the Palate Arco, would they go into like a toxic with Palate Arco?
There's a die-off potential there as well too. Okay. But again, you want to be very welcoming to that. You don't want to not do it because you know there's going to be a die-off.
Well, this person I know, she's been dealing with undiagnosed disease for her whole life.
Right.
She's in her 50s. So she's very leery of trying anything.
Yeah, it's tough when you're not, like I say, you got to be willing to kind of push that envelope and looking for change to happen. Remarkable change, really does.
She's tried everything.
So
she's a nutritionist.
Interesting.
So that's why I was asking, because I've told her about things, because I've known her almost my whole life.
Right.
But,
the Palate Arco is a fantastic piece, but again, it's one of those where when you have complex problems, a lot of times that just really you're just looking at symptoms, and you can maybe even balance and manage symptoms, but then the problem still sits there.
Or it rears its head later on.
Correct, and that's
what happens with her.
Yeah. So you might fix it for a day or two, or a week, or a month, and then all of a sudden you're right back in the same spot.
She's back on her back.
Yeah. So it's unique because the more complicated the issues and the more time you let things happen, it's definitely one of those where you just try to unwind that as best you can. And if she's been working on herself, a lot of times I find that to be interesting too, because outside perspective helps a lot. So it definitely comes into.
Like I said, she's in her 50s. She's gone to
just about everybody. Well, I don't believe there's any such thing as a lost cause, but it's one of those where.
She doesn't either.
Yeah, so you just gotta figure something out there. But okay, but no, again, if you have severe candida overgrowth, meaning thrush in the tongue, yeast infections routinely, skin irritations and infections, your eyes are generally cloudy, goopy, to where there's just a lot of candida overgrowth, then you're going to expect a die-off to occur with the Palate Arco. Yeah.
What about introducing a lot of the sauerkrauts?
Oh yeah, well, because it comes from the gut. So anytime you can actually use different compounds that have probiotic in them in order to balance the gut system first, then that releases the stress on the rest of the body where the candida is not supposed to be. And it can be something where you can see a good level of healing occur there too. So yeah, big benefits there.
I know there were a lot of items here that help with hormones and stuff. What about maca? Maca?
Yeah, maca is a very fantastic way. Anything that you put into the colon that's fibrous will actually help pull any excess hormone out of the body. So maca does a fantastic job, just like baobab and sunflower lecithin and mesquite pod and lucuma and coconut milk powder and beet juice, anything that has a fiber compound in it, chia seed, to help removing them out of the actual colon. So when you have an over production of estrogen, then you can remove it from the intestine so your blood's not absorbing it by increasing your fiber dose.
Because I noticed, like years ago, I started getting the hot flashes and stuff, and I started using like maca, and then changing the food things. So
Yep.
I rarely get any of that.
Yeah. And you should.
Exactly. I just think it's amazing how what you put in your body
Totally changes.
shows up. Because a lot of my friends are at that point where they're hot flashing all the time, and I'm like,
Right. When it comes to estrogen, one of the products we didn't talk about in class, but is very critical, is actually passion flower. To where this is actually what they call a aromatase inhibitor. One of the issues in a lot of people's bodies is, again, the estrogen dominance, and it's because their body is always converting progesterone into either estrogen or testosterone. But then there's this aromatase molecule that actually takes testosterone and converts it to estrogen too. And there is no cycle that actually back loops in order to reverse that. So you end up in a lot of people who especially been taking progesterone for a long time as a hormone, like a hormone replacement therapy, producing far too much estrogen because everything's either getting produced to estrogen right away or aromatizing into estrogen in the second fold. So estrogen dominance is their normalcy. And until they get aromatase inhibitor back in the body, they can't actually undo that process and protect their testosterone. So again, we really want to be working with a lot of people towards the idea of understanding we all need testosterone in our systems, what keeps, again, our cells very full of vitality. So too much, roid rage. Just enough keeps us happy and healthy. And we really want a lot of good things occurring for ourselves, and keeping that balance is so critical. So this product is really wonderful on the passion flower and the nettle for getting it to where your body converts in the liver your hormones properly from the progesterone, and it's creating the right enzymes to do that. So balance is fantastic for the estrogen dominance and the estrogen issues. Yes?
So should I start taking that now to prolong?
In this society, where we are and how things are working, yes. I mean, it's one of those to where, here's the funny thing.
Some people get it early too.
Menopause is only really an American creation. There's very few other countries that have like a phase of life called menopause. The rest of them, they just go from not having a cycle to, from having a cycle to not having a cycle, and it's like, well, that's done, and it's just life is going on. Like, there's no major, we have celebration parties, and we give all this craziness, like, enhancement to it, and we make, a symptomatic, because again, what your body is saying, you didn't have enough hormone to get to this point. Your body was out of whack, and now I'm going to do the very frequent period or non-frequent period, heavy bleeding, no bleeding, major hot flashing, skin issues, all the other problems happen because everything wasn't working before you got there. So that's one of those unique understandings, is that we kind of do something here to create almost a condition that's should be very easy for the body to switch out of. But that's one of those where anything you're doing now will always work towards keeping you healthier through the rest of your life system. I mean, that's the beautiful benefit of this. It's fantastic to invest in you, in your own health today, for making sure that you don't have problems later on.
So I get the natural testosterone pellet in the screen to the doctor.
Uh-huh.
So is this just another way to keep it all leveled up when you do that?
Correct. So if you're taking testosterone, yes, then it's one of those where you want to get
just little pellets they put in your backside and it goes for 4 or 5 months. They're natural.
right. But that's one of those where you'll want to test your aromatase and even do the saliva test for your hormone profile in order to see how your body's converting. And that's one of those where you might find out that maybe you're overdosing yourself or underdosing.
This doctor's really into all this stuff. She teaches good nutrition and all as part of her thing. She doesn't.
Good.
It's not.
Is that a good thing though, to put pellets in your body?
I don't think so.
See,
That's why I'm not hormone based. They're exactly bioidentical. So
That's what's so many people say, oh, I don't take anything, but then when you talk to them, they are taking stuff. And you're like,
Yeah.
well, you are taking stuff. Like, it's changing your...
Exactly. And it's just one of those where we're all trying to discover how to get our body in balance. I mean, that's the whole point. And it's one of those where, to me, there's a goal. There's a goal. I like having a goal of saying, let's try to find a way to correct this to where that's not necessary. Because again, it always goes back to in the natural world, no doctoring system available. How would you do it? Well, you would try to find some sort of food system to make it work for you as best you could. We're just good at inventing things and helping each other out, and it's great because again, you probably have a lot of like belief in just overall your body's
plant-based.
Yeah.
So for me, it's no different than eating the plants in the powder. It's made out of plant-based. There's no chemicals in it. That's
Yeah.
why it works.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, it's just a different way of taking it.
yeah. That's,
No, that's good.
I think these things are also.
I'm glad she's gone that step though, because a lot of people they would just slap you full of progesterone cream and send you out.
The thing is, let's get your nutrition good and let's balance everything.
Beautiful. What's the name?
She's Dr. Blanchett here in Hammond.
That's it.
Your thoughts on?
Yeah, she does the Tuesday hormone
Fantastic. Yeah.
She doesn't promote the replacement like the old stuff because it's like she said,
Yeah.
compound. Every drug they make has a compound to make it unique to them so they can make money, which is not good for your body. So
Typically, yes, exactly.
she hates giving drugs.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. But that's and that's fantastic. Like you say, that's always great that there's more people talking that way now because that wasn't normal 20 years ago, 10 years ago. So I'm glad we've kind of seen the changes come around for us and seeing big benefits and good health occurring.
What would you say as far as like skin issues, as far as like psoriasis, eczema, season, any of those?
Yeah. So
Is
it's
that more complicated than?
a little bit more complicated, but understand that anything that's breaking the skin and causing the skin to not work properly is probably not being able to detoxify the normal natural way. Urination, defecation, or sweating. And so it builds up in the skin, and then the skin has no way of reacting to it except for microbial overgrowths or certain kind of issues there. So, and your patches, if you're a person dealing with eczema psoriasis, tell you something about where the hormone that's not being produced or being used right is leaching out of the body. And a lot of times it is connected to that.
I
So,
have this right here.
so up on the shoulders.
And then when I got pregnant, after I had this last baby, it went all the way down here. And up, like, all the way here. I don't know what this is particularly, but
Yeah.
it's
So,
hormone related.
I've
because it's a baby.
seen so well. I mean, again, that's the most drastic hormone change thing you could possibly do. But it is one of those where there's probably something that was depleted, and on the nutrition side, it's still waiting to come back up to get it to where at least it recedes to where it's not overtaking the area. And again, there'd be something where, especially like nutritional bathing, getting it to where your bath water actually helps you pull anything out of the body that needs to go out is fantastic. Far infrared saunas, dry brushing, those sort of ways of moving lymph. Because again, it's under the dermis, obviously, because it's trying to come out the pores of the skin. So if anything you can do to move that around and get it to leach out of the body, the better. So sweating more routinely,
I've been
getting
doing Bikram yoga, which is
so
helping.
Bikram's fantastic. Inverting even to get your lymph to go the opposite direction of gravity, and dry brushing is fantastic for. Yeah, so you take like a silk glove or like a wire brush or like a horsehair brush, and you go against gravity and rub your skin up to where everything moves, and it actually gets it all out of the body, and that way you can get your lymph moving. No, it's very relaxed.
It's just like,
Like exfoliating. Yeah, no,
Exfoliating.
it's really kind of.
Dry skin.
You do it. You can do it after the shower.
Yeah.
When your skin's a little more moist. For some people, like depends on where you start. Start with a silk glove then, and just do an actual massage with a really soft tissue until because your dryness is actually an indication of nutritional imbalance and hormone imbalance as well
Well, and that's
too.
what happened when I got pregnant with two of my kids. I went oily and started having acne while I was pregnant. And afterwards, I had dry skin again.
Right.
So my skin just is showing something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely something in that.
Well, and I had psoriasis since I was 12, but that fluctuates as well. So I was like, I don't know what really it is particularly.
System cleaning. Yeah, you and I need to talk more instead of just hanging out by the pool.
right?
Are the different things?
It does.
You get it on your legs
Yep.
versus your arm or
Legs,
your stomach?
legs and calves, sides of stomach,
So
shoulders.
what does it tell you in different areas?
It depends on the version of it, because again, if like it's very permanent on the calf, a lot of times we're seeing that the blood's just too heavy in iron, and it's not being able to actually, so hemochromatosis and those kind of conditions, as well as a lot of adrenaline. So when we have it again over top of the actual like kidneys right here, there's an interesting compound that occurs to where we're actually getting a little too much of the norepinephrine and the cortisol. And so again, it's interesting because they're trying to detox, and yet that's what they're doing to the skin. And most people do everything they can to cover up the skin and get it to where they put a shield on the outside of it instead of just let it leach. That's one of those old world mentalities where you got to boil, hold on 1 second, slice it and let it bleed out until it's gone. Okay, great, we'll keep doing this, no problem. But it took care of the problem because something's trying to get out. We're all about making this look pretty and getting it back in. Yeah,
Well, we're a Band-Aid society. That's
Of
kind
course.
what we come to.
Would you mind saying what elbow and knees?
So if it's like plaque psoriasis and it's coming down here, a lot of times this is again estrogen. This is one of the big ones for estrogen.
And the knees?
Knee, so front of knee, just the front, estrogens.
And the back of the scalp?
Ooh. Up into the hairline. So right here, could be two different things. I know for sure that I've seen a lot of people, again, on estrogen that have that issue because their DHT molecules are far too high. So it's creating the skin eruptions there. So that's that converted form of testosterone, and the estrogen overdominance is causing it to coalesce right there. Because it's coming out of the pituitary gland and not being used. So it's literally, just leaching right out of the back of the skull. And so a lot of people, like I say, those are the two. So it's probably still those two sex hormones are just in dysfunction. And that's the unique thing too, is a lot of people like to treat their skin in order to remove the issue instead of putting on activated charcoal paste or zeolite paste and letting it just suck it right out and let it go out through the skin, and then the skin will heal, and then you can hopefully move on with your life.
So you should do charcoal stuff?
Oh yeah, mud masks and zeolite masks and things like that, and coat your skin area any place where it's at. Again,
Activated charcoal as well.
correct. You can't take it, but at first it might irritate it even more. And you got to understand to not be scared. That's actually kind of that. And you go, wait, this went from just being itchy to now it's bleeding. What's happening? But it's because now the concentration, when you put a pack of some type, castor oil packing is another great compound for people. To where when they have leaching in particular spots, just coat some tissue or whatever in castor oil, shove it on there, saran wrap, and heat pack it for a day. And let that in all the fat soluble toxins will come out of you and into the oil, and then you can take that one and throw it away and start again if it's still there, and keep that cycle moving towards that process. But that's where.
Have you seen people actually get rid of psoriasis doing stuff
Oh,
like
of
that?
course. Again, I still find most psoriasis conditions, and let's say 60, maybe 70%, are usually something not being digested properly inside the gut. Most of the time. And it's looking for a way out. And so it's just trying to find anywhere it can break the skin and get out of the body.
I find mine flares up with dairy and sugar. If I'm eating more of those things, it flares. And then if I need to taper it back, it goes back. Same with my sinus issues, sinus psoriasis, eczema. Those three things, dairy and sugar.
Yeah, of course. Those are very common.
Yeah.
Very common.
That goes back to the toxic liver thing, the body just can't process everything.
Well, the dairy issue in our society is the fact that for about 50 years, 60 years now, our dairy's been 100% contaminated by exogenous hormones, all the different fertilizers, now GMOs and everything else. And so you're taking in a compound that's concentrated liquid sludge, really, out of the breast tissue of another animal, which I'm not against milk. But the idea is conventional milk has a lot of problems. So raw milk actually usually does pretty well for most people. But you can still have the immune response, which is the allergenic, and that creates the histamine flushing, and then you get all the redness and the itchiness and everything come in, and then so it's a double fold process there. But a lot of people began their process by becoming allergic to conventional dairy which you should have had an allergy to because it's not good. So that's one of those funny things. And it saves you. Your body tries to save you by saying, every time you eat this, I'm going to hurt you. And then you keep eating it, and you're like, I love cheese. It's so good. And so, you don't realize that if you just either look at your product and go, what could be wrong with this? Oh, I know. All the stuff that they put into the animal. Okay, let's fix that. And all of a sudden you go to a much more holistic food, and your body isn't reactive anymore. And you're like, well, so was it, and that's where lactose intolerance, gluten intolerance, all these issues that are happening more often than not are because of the cross members that are coming in at the same time. It's the GMO wheat and the gluten at the same time that's actually doing a big number on people's digestive systems and causing problems.
And mold, right?
Oh yeah, huge.
Because I used to only eat garlic, and now in my body I instantly get throat burns, like almost immediately.
Oh, well,
15 years I was,
Allison compound, yeah. So what's funny is that shows that there's actually something in your blood system that the garlic's trying to kill, and it's either an A, work past it, or B, detoxify first and find a way to pull material out, and then you probably could go back to eating garlic again. But the Allison compound that's in garlic, that's the really, really high energetic antiviral, antifungal material. Again, if there's something systemically in the tissues and you eat a clove, your body...
Just anything that has garlic in it, sauces, anything, and then immediately, within minutes, I can tell my throat's not feeling good, and then I'm just almost violently ill within hours.
Yeah, so that's a huge, like I say, try to figure out a way to unlock that that place, because it wasn't something your body was experiencing before. So obviously, as it built up, whatever compound is in there that it's not liking, but garlic's usually again fighting for your good, and it's one of those places where we don't want to lose it as an ally. But it will create that reaction. There's more gentle things because garlic's very intense. Even something like cinnamon and cardamom added to like teas and milk or nut milks are lower level antivirals that a lot of people aren't hyper reactive to and can have big benefits. So there's always some place to start. That's the cool, wonderful part about this whole process.
It's mind-boggling though. There's so much.
But you gotta start. A step, any step.
This stuff is vitamin D deficiency. Is that used for people that live in a sunny climate?
Oh yes.
So what causes that?
Showering is the biggest one, and then honestly, our gut health is the second biggest piece. Vitamin D requires 7 organs inside our visceral section to actually operate all in time and perfectly without any interruptions in order for you to produce proper vitamin D levels. So bad digestion, no vitamin D. And if you shower anytime between 72 hours after sun exposure, all the vitamin D oil that your body created is gone, right down the drain. And sunscreen use, correct. So when you put the ultraviolet blocking material, well, that means no ultraviolet gets in to convert your D2, and you don't get any D3.
Unless you use a mineral based,
Right, if you're using just a basic zinc oxide compound. Yep.
How do you feel about sunscreens anyways? Because I've given up on them too. I
have one.
There's some that are okay,
I've given
but
up totally. I'm coconut oil only. You
That's
know what?
sport. Coconut oil is sport. Some people that have actually celiac and rheumatoid arthritis can't put it on their skin.
Huh.
Yep.
And why is that?
Because question
My nephew has horrible reaction to coconut oil.
Yeah.
Really?
He just
yeah,
bursts
fantastic.
blisters
So
out.
yeah, this is a coconut oil one with zinc oxide. Oh, and this is the actual tanning oil.
No, it's more to put in.
But yeah, the interesting part about the sun issue is that totally not a topic for health and wellness, but because I happen to be your local friendly geologist, I do know a lot about the way that the sun and the earth are actually interacting with each other. There is a tremendous issue inside our atmosphere and the way that our pole shift is occurring and how rapidly we're getting degeneration in the EM field. And as solar exposure continues to increase, there's no sunscreen in the world that can save a lot of people from the fact that we're just getting hit by much deeper and harder by the actual sun rays. So it is one of those where wear a hat, limit your exposure, try to keep yourself in it doesn't pay to really do the over baking anymore. And again, as much as it's fun to have a tan, it's such a hard thing for your body to heal from a lot of times as well, even too. And again, it takes that one question kind of out of the picture. Because I don't know of any sunscreen minus literally walking out vampire paste white with zinc oxide that can actually stop what's occurring in terms of the amount of energy that's hitting the surface.
What about the fact that, for thousands of years, people have been in the sun?
Yes.
And protected.
Better
Now
diet.
we're all about protecting.
Yeah, better diet was the biggest piece in that. Again, our average vitamin D count's about 25. The average vitamin D count 100 years ago was about 70. The average vitamin D count 200-300 years ago was about 140. So we've seen a tremendous issue. And if you look at the way that bioselectivity and latitude and sun exposure changes your skin color, that's the natural way that melatonin protects you. Melanin and melatonin are connected. They're your skin pigmentation. So if you need to be less affected by the amount of sun you're being exposed to, you develop darker and darker skin. And that's the easy way to understand this. If you don't have that shielding, that natural protectant, you shouldn't be in the sun that much. But we moved out of the great Northlands and came down south and said, we're here to have a party. And everyone just puts on sunscreen. We don't realize the effects of it.
With the vitamin D deficiency, is that associated or does that lead to the fibromyalgia?
It can, because you're not regenerating your cells.
Yeah, would someone be better off taking a prescription 50,000 milligrams or daily?
You don't need a prescription.
Daily doses?
Well, again, it depends on your deficiency level. If you're at 25, you probably need to be anywhere between 100 to 200,000 a day for 3 months, and boost your level up.
How about a 13 and a 10?
So for children, it's their age divided by 2 until they hit.
The reading was 13 and then 10. That's how deficient
You are?
I was.
Oh.
So what was that?
Yeah, again, as much as you can possibly do every single day.
It seems to run in my family. Is everybody's
No such thing.
Okay.
But
my members are getting tested and
Correct.
they're deficient
Correct.
so much. And
Stop showering, stop swimming in chlorine pools, and again, the big thing is just to improve that gut, because that's where a lot of the dysfunction's occurring.
It's okay to
But-
take like 10,000 beats a day.
10,000 is a minimum for most adults today, a day. That's a minimum.
10,000. But is fibromyalgia an actual diagnosis?
No.
Or is it just?
No, fibromyalgia is a simple way of saying we don't know what causes your pain and what's creating the nerve fiber dysfunction, and so we're just going to lump you into a category that has no solution. But the idea is detoxification and improving nutrient deficiencies can solve the problem.
So the D deficiency can hurt your joints too?
Yes, of course. Anything, because vitamin D is so critical in cellular regeneration and cellular turnover and the communication network that we keep inside our cells. They aren't sending the proper signals. If you're that low in vitamin D, I'm surprised you weren't bleeding through portions and parts of your body, actually, because cells usually aren't even replicating fast enough once you get below 10. So that's.
I started at 10, then I went to 13, then I got it up to 25, and now I'm a little bit higher.
Yeah. But 65 is my minimum. That's for basic good health. And between 80 and 100 is the average for most people. So there's some big benefits. Yeah, big benefits. So you're way, way, way down when there's a big thing to get up here.
So if you're
I need
taking
to ask
the
you a question.
D3,
I'm leaving now.
Okay.
This is about omega-3, 6s, and 9s. My husband has heart disease, so I put him on a very plain diet, and he's lost a lot of weight.
Poor him.
He exercise.
Yep.
And he has problems with balance from fluid in his brain. And so I've been finding a lot of comments from here, I really like, but I've been confused about now whether I should just get the fish oil or just get only the omega-3s. Should I get the omega-3, 6s, and 9s, because now he doesn't need any junk food, doesn't need any processed food of any kind. Should I just constantly give him omega-3s every day for his common heart and brain, or in circulation, or should I just make sure to keep the O3, 6, and 9?
Like your hemp seed oil or the
Yeah. 6 is pro-inflammatory, so the more 6 you give them, the worse it is for the brain.
So I don't want that.
So 3 and 9,
He doesn't get any.
3 and 9
Okay.
are better. Again, all plants and all seeds have technically a spectrum of all of the omegas. But so certain ones are going to be higher in omega-6, and you can look at Livestrong.com or any of the nutritional profile sites to find out which ones are higher.
What's the website?
Livestrong.com. But focus on 3 and 9. But there's so much more to healing the brain. We gave our actual talk on brain health 3 months ago, I think it was. That's so critical, and it's recorded. So if you let Pia know, she can maybe send a link, or have me send a link, or email me, and then we can get some. But yeah, focus on 3 and 9. Those are the protected ones. 3 and 9. And get cholesterol back into a normal range, because again, if it's too low, then there's a lot of
too high. I don't know why.
too high of what?
They're saying that.
What's the number?
HDL and
What's the number?
I don't remember.
The doctoring system hates cholesterol because it keeps you healthy. So the funny thing is,
You have to have
but-
cholesterol.
yeah, you have to have cholesterol. So
Above 300.
above 300, if he's in constant inflammation, he's going to produce more cholesterol. So you don't want to stop that, and I hope they're not giving him a drug to make
They
that stop.
already started a week ago. And I wasn't
Cut him
even
off.
it.
Do the smart thing for him and cut him off.
But when you're
It's only been a week. You can do sunflower lecithin and mesquite pods and chia seeds and
Sunflower seeds and what else?
sunflower lecithin is a great cholesterol balance. Rice bran solubles.
Okay, rice bran solubles.
Fantastic.
Sunflower lecithin.
So those all really help moderate cholesterol, because 300 is really not bad for someone who has brain dysfunction and heart dysfunction.
Are you doing the blood pressure medicine?
Yeah.
Medicine, this and that,
If you love them, want to keep them, don't do that. If you don't,
Give them as much
Do you have the omega-3?
the omega-3, yeah, omega-3 is fine.
But is it enough? Have we got little bottles of dosages? Are those enough for him? Okay,
There's no real enough. It's the idea of doing at least a couple droppers per day on routine, and working with just also the other anti-inflammatories. So there's a lot in that of that understanding piece. What?
Turmeric.
Turmeric, yeah.
Oh, okay. And there's more on top. I can't have these salts. I do salt and sea salt. That is not a problem with sodium anymore.
That's good.
All right, thank you for your help.
You're very welcome, and I'm sure I have cards there. If you want have more questions or need email assistance, just let me know.
Oh, thank you very
That
much.
way we can. Yeah, I'd love to make it sure.
Sylvia back in case I
Sylvia, fantastic. Very nice meeting you. So thank you everybody for coming this evening. I really hope that, again, lots of questions answered, and we had lots of great information. So we will see you next month. So have fun till then. Feel free, like I say, to always